That's right. It's getting sexy time.
Yeah.
We're back with another one.
Man, listen, Brittney Griner is freed. And I know that there's political bullshit going on around there. Let's just forget about that and just appreciate the moment that Brittney is freed and she is on U.S. soil again. And to me, that's just a really great place to start, because the reality is that, like, we can say that, you know, it was a bad trade or it was a Sam Presti, Paul George type trade, but I don't know. I'm just excited that we have Brittney back, and I don't really care about any of the other bullshit.
Yeah, man. Super happy that she's out of there. And there's so many other things about social justice to talk about, how people are locked up in the United States for the same crime, and that needs to be dealt with. But right now is a time for celebration, and we can deal with that stuff later. I also think it's a time for us to look inside ourselves and ask ourselves, are we going to start paying women, professional athletes, their fair share so they don't have to go over? You know, I know, you know, Dave, like, we know somebody who was drafted number 2 in the NBA draft. We grew up watching her play.
WNBA?
WNBA, yep. And watching her have to go and earn her money in Russia never made any sense to me. And she never had the career she could have. She was a special athlete. She went to UConn. But half her year was spent in Russia. And I know we can say whatever we want about Russia's, you know, situation in the world, but if whatever you want to say, they're paying better. Like, we need to figure it out. And this is something that I've, like, talked about for years, but I think the next time they have a collective bargaining agreement, they need to sit down and say 2.5% total NBA revenue is going to be set aside for the WNBA and maturing that.
I think what they need to do is they need to give a great, you know, a steroid shot right in the ass and say any money that has been tax money, any of the money that's going over the tax money is put right into the WNBA. It would give them a huge $150, $300 to $300 million, depending on the year, infusion. Something like that would allow these teams and owners to be able to do stuff.
I'm with you, but we realize, like, that the political issues that come down to this are very extensive. And, like, we're both making proposals that are out there, you know, like, that are far out, because in the end, we know neither side is going to want to give up any money whatsoever. Like, every single collective bargaining agreement, it's always like they're arguing over, you know, 45 to 55, you know, 43 to 50, whatever, dude. They're always getting so close. It's all within like 0.5%, 2%. Yeah. The idea of, like, suddenly shifting a big chunk or the revenue this way or that way, like, it's not going to happen unless everybody says, we're not going to let this Brittney Griner thing just drop. Right? She is one of the great, she's in the Mount Rushmore of female athletes in American history, but they pay her better in a place that we say, oh yeah, they have, you know, such backwards ways. Maybe we have more backwards ways than we know. And we have to take a moment and we have to see the leaderships of the Players Association, like Chris Paul, and the leadership of the owners, right? They need to say, hey, listen, we're willing to both take a step back. And we're both willing to figure out a way to make sure that a portion of all of this funding that's going on with the NBA, which is in the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, is funneled to pay women athletes. And they need to say the Brittney Griner rule, the Brittney Griner measure, the Brittney Griner agreement. It needs to be in there. And if we don't learn anything from this, then you know what? Without getting too political, like, Putin's just going to grab another one of our athletes and get another one of his warlords out.
I mean, I think it's one of those interesting facts when push comes to shove. My daughter, she just wrote a paper recently. She's a freshman in high school, and they're having her write a paper about why women, or why not, why should women, or why should women not be paid equally. And, you know, it was interesting because she told me, she was saying that all the girls wrote about how, you know, equality is equality. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, girl or guy or, you know, whatever. It's across the board. And she was saying that it's frustrating when you're talking about athletes and you're talking about women CEOs and different things like that they get so much less money than men do. And as a dad of a girl, and coming from the background that Mark and I came from, like it was like women had their places in every home, and that was in raising children, having children, and the dishes, and it was kind of our like joke.
We grew up in a fucked up world. Let's just face it.
Fucked up world, right? But now I as a dad that I consider myself very open to what the world truly is out there, and explaining it to my daughter in such a way that I was like, Bella, this is the reality in the matter, is that no matter what is said, no matter what the argument is, no one is ever going to change that women are getting paid less than men in sports, because anybody that's in a power or a position of power is always going to say people want to see men more than they want to see women because of the muscles, because they can jump higher, because they can do that. And I was like, if people are judging women's sports against men's sports, they're always going to be disappointed. It's a different type of sport. Just like if you try to judge soccer with basketball, it's a different sport. Or you take football against basketball, it's a different type of sport. Yes, basketball and women's basketball is the same sport, but it's played a very different way. And if you can take time to truly understand how it's played, you can understand it and appreciate it. But if you're sitting there expecting to see men play in a girls' basketball game, you're just going to be like, well, like it's not that. You're not going to have spectacular dunks and, insane stuff like that, but you're going to get incredible backdoors. You're going to get incredible passing. You're going to get incredible shots. Like, women's sports is a different type of watching. It's not, I'm going to see all these dominant, men do all these great things that are 6'8" and 7'2" and different things like that. It's something I believe that if we take time to just truly appreciate, like there is no separation, like I don't like it. And as a dad that has a girl, I don't want my daughter to look at it and be like, well, I can kind of top out right here because I'm a woman. Like I can't do much more than this right here because I'm a woman. But if I was a man, I could go up here. And I don't want that. I don't want it to be the excuse. I want my kids, my daughter, my wife is in the military and has made an incredible career out of that. And it's because she's taken the bull by the horns and really made the army her bitch. And I love it. And that's what I want my daughter to see, is that if you don't like it, then change it. If we don't like it, then change it. It's as simple as that. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to put yourself in a position to be able to do that. And, we're talking to people all around the world and positions. And, I've said on here before, I have a friend in Saudi Arabia. He listens to our show once in a while. His wife is a doctor, and, she doesn't work. And she's probably one of the most educated people I've ever met in my entire life that is unable to work. And it's something across the world. And it's something as a girl dad that I don't like, and I want to see change. And I don't know how that change is going to happen, but I think it's something that one of those things where it's just going to take the right commissioner at the right time and the change will happen.
Yeah. And it's important to use momentum when a situation like this does take place. And we need to look at, what the problem is, but we can move forward, from this situation better off as a country, only if we learn from it. Otherwise, it's just like, what the fuck is the point? So I'm hoping that, this can kick off conversations. I'm glad that Brittney is back on U.S. soil. And I think we need to talk more about her crime and how people in the United States are getting locked up for the same thing. That's important, but we'll do that on another episode, bro.
Hey, I got a question, though. It's kind of crazy, though. The last 2 years, there has been Free Brittney in the headlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what else do you want, guys? I mean,
different
both
reasons.
Brittneys are free, baby.
Different reasons, but, I mean, in the end, you know what? I mean, it comes down to,
dude,
like a system that is not fair to women. You know what I mean?
Let's go ahead and skip right here and get back talking about this Thunder. Let's just 9 minutes of talking about women's sports and Brittney Griner and Britney Spears has been great. But let's go ahead and talk about Thunder, because we watched a rough game the other day.
Not really. Like if you think about it, bro, like the first 3 quarters, yeah, we weren't in great shape, but we put on
what
our
happened in that fourth
comeback.
quarter. Let's talk about that fourth quarter.
Put on
What
our
happened in that
classic
fourth
comeback, right? We got some major play from everybody.
It was so great.
But Look, there's a lot of different ways that anybody can assess this, but in the end, right? They had a game plan for when Shea came back in the game. We've seen a lot of teams have a game plan for when Shea comes out of the game, and they put a lot of pressure on, and we've learned how to like handle that punch and lay a punch back. And it's coming from Dort, it came from Bazley, it came from Poku, it came from J-Dub, it came from everybody. Like, they were just attacking, and they were getting downhill, and they were finding good shots, and Isaiah Joe was out there knocking down shots. So we saw it from everybody. But then Shea came back in. And what happened was, I won't say that Shea was the reason that, the ball movement stopped. But what happened was they had a plan for how to defend him, and we didn't adjust. That's it. It's not at the end of the world. It's one of those, you go back and you look at the film, and I guarantee they will. There's been 1,000 things this year that we've, fucked up on early in the season, and then we come back and adjust. And one of those things was just the thing we said, which is we have 5 guys on the court who are attacking. I forgot to mention Josh Giddey too, like getting downhill, getting to the bucket, scoring when Shea's on the bench. So we were able to put that run on when Shea was out. That's been a weakness of ours for most of the year. So we've been able to make the adjustments once. We'll do it again.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like watching the game and watching it kind of morph in that fourth quarter into what I would consider the Poku fourth quarter. Just the way that he was up and down the court and really showing up mobily. That was my biggest take from that. It was, he was in a way showing Mobley, catch me if you can type of stuff. And I liked it, man. I like that mentality. And I look back and I see all these long, stringy guys, and I keep on getting excited because you see Poku attacking the whole well. You're seeing this person and that person. But the most excited I am about any of these young players is a 19-year-old that has only played in a few games in the Thunder, but has really been tearing apart the G League, man. That's Ousmane Dieng. Like, Ousmane Dieng, bro, is spectacular. I don't know if you've watched a lot of his games in the G League. He's only played in 9.
I haven't.
But what he's been able to do out there is truly spectacular. And when you're watching a player that belongs in varsity basketball and they're playing currently in JV and they're like just dominating in every aspect, that's what Dieng's doing. He's out there dominating in assist. He's out there dominating in boards, and in particular offensive boards, getting blocked shots. He's had 3 games in a row with two blocked shots in each game. Like, he's doing these crazy things out there, and you have to stop and be like, okay, wow, this is really spectacular. Yes, it's G League, and yes, we don't get carried away with too much with G League, but what we're seeing with him and the maturity that he's playing with and the way that he attacks the hole, we've watched so many other players come through that G League and watch them morph their game right into the NBA. And I have to say is that Dieng, the way he's playing out there in the 9 games that I've watched him, it's special, man. He has this fluid game that's just easy. It just comes like, it's just easy, man. Like, everything he does is like dribble, boom, bucket. And it's like, wow, that was like, I didn't expect it to be that easy. There's 3 guys right there, like, he rises up, he finishes, he gets steals, he understands where the ball is going, he understands skip passing so that you can get there quicker. Like, he does so many things on defense that are so next level. Then you just flip it on the offensive side, and he's so good at understanding when to pass the ball to the open guy. Those guys, those point guards or even guards that take the ball and they drive to the hole and they pass the ball 2 steps early or a step late, and the shot is no longer open. Like, you see Ousmane Dieng drive to the hole hard, and at the exact time the ball needs to go and leave his hands, it does. And then you're starting to watch and you're saying, oh, well, that was one time. And then he does it again. It's all game. And then it's for all the other games that he's playing in. And it's like, okay, he's got that point guard vibe. He got that point guard mentality. He's got that point guard state of mind. And watching him and attacking, and I just can't get, I can't help but get carried away and watching how he's dominating in the games. And it's like, he can do this in the NBA. Like, he has that right height. He has that right body style and type. He can play defense, and he can attack the hole like nobody's business. We saw it at New Zealand Breakers, and he's doing it again in G League, and he's done it in the few games that he's played in the NBA. So we know it's there. But, man, what I am seeing in the G League and his stats and the games and what he's putting forth in effort, it's something that's special that's happening. And I can't help but just get totally amped up and excited about how Ousmane Dieng is going to translate into the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen him take what he's, worked on and execute it well for the Thunder. But, pretty quickly we saw him go back down to the G League. And,
But that's part of it. He goes 3 games G League, plays a couple games in the NBA, 3 games G League, and it's just it's the pattern of what the Thunder are doing.
Right. So it's pre-planned, right? And in a big way, they don't want the fact that he can contribute for the Thunder to inhibit his long-term progress of multiple elements of his game. And I think there's a sense that that he just goes in there and shoots the 3 when he's open and drives when he's open there, which is something he's capable of, it'll stunt his growth. So they're saying, we want you to score on all 3 levels. We want you to develop as a passer, as a ball handler, as a defender, and you're going to have more opportunity to do that. So even though you can contribute, we're going to ask you to continue to work on the G League first, which, let's just think about this, right? How often do we see that? I have to think that even for the Thunder, who, use their G League more than any other team that I'm aware of, this is unusual for them because generally speaking, if the Thunder have a player who can help them out, they bring him up. So at this point, like, we've seen it only a couple of times where a player is at the point where they can help, but it's better for them to be down there with the G League. So, it's exceptional.
I think we've been talking about this, and especially talking about when we talk about the minor league in baseball and how the Cardinals, revitalized how they use a minor league system. And you're looking at this, and you're looking at Jalen Williams, J-Will from Arkansas. Like, he's using that G League time and those minutes is big because last year J-Will would have been playing for us last year. He would have gotten big minutes for us last year. But for me, I'm looking at J-Will and I'm looking at Dieng, and I'm saying this is exactly where you need to be because you got the 4th player, or I think it's the 4th player in leading minutes for the Thunder is J-Dub. That's perfect. He's getting those minutes that he needs. So watching Ousmane and some of these other guys go and play in that G League time, like, listen, that's part of their development. That's part of Lindy Waters' development. That's part of Omowari's development. Like, these guys need the minutes. Like, they're going and contributing in the NBA games, yes, but the fact that we have the G League and we're having 4 guys that get NBA minutes, 5 guys that get NBA minutes play down there, it's phenomenal, man. It's you have to earn your spot. Next year I'm assuming that our G League's gonna be full with a couple first rounder and a couple second rounders. And it's going to be like, you guys want your spot? Great. Earn it. Because that's the only way to get through to the varsity guys is, earning your way through the G League. And I think that it's a powerful way of using and utilizing it, because if they want to say, oh, I don't want to go and I don't want to do that, I want to play in the G League, well, then you're not the type of player we want anyways. We want guys that are going to do whatever it takes to be that role player, to be that scorer, to be that defender, to be that whatever we need. We want guys to give it up for a year and get paid really well to go play in G League basketball, because that's how you develop quickly. I mean, you get a guy that's demolishing college basketball, then they get to the NBA and they can't figure it out. They can't dominate. They can't score. And you're like, well, that's because the developmental issues are wrong. Yes, you're right. But that's why the G League's so important, because if you bring that G League in there and you're saying we're giving these guys and allowing their assets to shine before they get to the NBA, I mean, that's the key, man. Like watching Ousmane Dieng average 2.2 offensive rebounds a game, averaging almost 2 blocks a game. Like the things that he's doing out there, it's like, holy cow. Like,
so let me ask you, bro, like, out of the things he's doing out there that we haven't yet seen him do for the Thunder yet, what do you think is the most impressive that will be like, wow?
Well, we've seen glimpses of it in the NBA, but his defense, right? His defense is spectacular with those really long arms. And I'm watching how the Thunder are playing him, and I feel like they're utilizing him in an even keel forward/guard mentality. Like he plays a lot of wings on defense, and I dig it, man. I like how they're utilizing him out there.
I think like with that idea of him guarding wings versus guarding forwards, or power forwards and centers. Like, of course that can come later, but man, he's got some incredible length on the perimeter.
Yeah. And it's freaky thinking about like the ways that he is being used out there. But I look at his greatest attribute, and I gotta say is Sam Presti did a phenomenal job drafting these guys this year. He picked guys that really highlight what they're already capable and good at, attacking the hole, attacking downhill, and have this really great, mid-range game when they're attacking. Ousmane Dieng is one of those guys. J-Dub is one of those guys. And it's really fun. I mean, Chet is one of those guys too, but we haven't been able to see it since he's been sidelined. But the two guys that are right in that center, the 11th and 12th pick for us, those guys have just dominated. Going downhill. When they choose to go downhill, it's domination. And that's one thing I love about Dieng is that's why he fits this offense so well. Is he catches that ball on the wing, and he's ready to go downhill. If he's not ready to go downhill, he's going to shoot it. He's shooting 30-something% from three-point range, which isn't spectacular, but it's not about that. It's about how he attacks the hole. I mean, his high percentage and field goal percentage is great to see. And I got to say, man, what he's doing for me for a 19-year-old in the G League and not getting a true full season in New Zealand in the NBL is something that I have to highlight and say, this is even more important for him to continue G League. Yes, go play varsity for a couple games, but come back JV again, because it's that maturity, it's that understanding and willingness to do whatever it takes to be that player and that team. And that's what's so important about this G League, is that it's going to teach players like, listen, I can't do that. Why? Well, if I do that, coach finds out about it, he's going to send me back to the G League. I don't want to do that. The maturity aspect of it, like, don't be fucking stupid, all right? Don't fuck around and see what happens. And that's it.
Don't Mitch McGarry it. All right. Not just him, though. We've had plenty of players who, over time, had trouble, once they got a taste of the NBA action, going back down to the G League and really accepting that type of role. And, some players figure out a role and they can stick to it, and they're pretty well off. And some players have a little trouble. Go ahead.
But it takes other players. Like I was talking to one of our buddies from France, and I was telling him, explaining some of the ideas of watching some of these players play. And we love Bazley. We think Bazley is amazing out here, right? And we think that he can be an incredible player. But one of the things I said is that sometimes these players that come through the league, they need to go to a couple different teams in order to find out their true potential. And it's a player like Jeremy Grant that comes to my mind. That's the delayed. I can't even think of the name of it. The delayed. I'm getting to an all-star. Delayed all-star. Like bounce around. Boom, 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 boom. Detroit, Oklahoma City, or 76ers, Oklahoma City, Denver, Detroit, and then bam, he's sitting in Portland and having the best season of his career, where everybody's saying, hey, he could be an all-star this year. And that's what it takes sometimes. Like you can't have every player at 19, 20, 22, 23 years old ready to go and ready to dominate. It takes other players to learn the game and understand where they're going to be successful at. And that's one of those things with Bazley that I've said, consistently, is that he just needs time understanding his role. And that's that. Like Bazley is the last Sam Presti pick of the Russell Westbrook era. Like he's the last one, but he's special because the way he locks down on defense and understands and the knowledge of the game, he's somebody that we want to have on this team for a while. But in order to play, in order to get to that, he has to be willing to give up something. And that something is, to me, giving up the fact that he's probably never going to be an 18, 19, 20-point player a game. And no matter where he goes, he's going to be known as a defensive specialist. And sometimes they don't understand that from the team that they were drafted from. And I want Bazley to understand that, because I want Bazley on this team for the longevity of his career, because he could be one of those guys that we look down, that's a Draymond Green or the Dennis Rodmans, or, that type of player that's willing to do whatever it takes for that team to win. And, you look at the bad boy Pistons, and they always had, I think his name is Lanier. Like he was the guy that was willing to do whatever it takes to help that team. And I look at Bazley as that perfect mentality. He has that big brother respect in that team. And I hope that he's able to work out a contract and stay with the Thunder, because to me, like, in the next few years, he's really going to blossom, and he's going to turn into one of those guys that either it's like that's why we kept Bazley, or it's like I wish we kept Bazley. And he's a special player.
I agree. I think it's going to be one of those two. Either we'll be like, hell yeah, we stuck with him and it paid off, or shit, he went somewhere else and he figured it out, and they reaped the reward of all the investment we got when we put in when he was a teenager and early 20s. So, like with players with a longer runway, you've got to be willing to be patient. And we saw people give up too early on Poku, and now they're willing to admit it after a very short amount of time. But Poku was more advanced than Darius was coming into the NBA, because even though Poku was playing like, I don't know, like really low level, it was still like, a team that had, I don't know, I would say it was better than high school basketball in the U.S. Now, yeah. I don't know that for sure, but I would say they probably taught the fundamentals in a way like that he didn't learn. So I feel like with Darius, he's going to figure it out, right? Now, at this moment, and luckily, he's still with his team. And I know a lot of people feel like they get frustrated with some of his, mistakes, and I don't need to like tell them. I just know, like, when the game was going on the other day, when he was driving, I felt like nervous for him. The same way I used to feel nervous for Russ when people like were really negative. It was like I hope he doesn't fuck up, because if he fucks up, then you're gonna have people going around being like, oh yeah, see, it's all his fault. He had a really good game, and people are afraid to be like, oh yeah, he's playing really good. Like, his defense is on point. He can really defend the perimeter, and it makes people think twice when he's out there, which is a really good thing. Yeah. And then when he's knocking down his shot, like, he has a legit chance to be a 3-and-D type player, and he was letting it fly with confidence. It looked good, and at the same time, it's like people are like afraid to give up their position that Bazley is on his way out. I understand why people want to have that mentality, but think about it like this, right? Go back to when you were a kid on the playground, right? And there was a bully, right? And they were picking on someone, right? If that person was on the basketball team, the football team, the soccer team, really any team, or even if they had friends, that group would stand up together against that bully. That would be the mentality. It's like, you're not going to pick on someone. He's one of us. And right now, with Darius being on this team and people picking on him, it really creates this environment where they're like, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. It's not okay. And so when you see someone and you're like, hey, they're picking on him, like, then you have to ask yourself, like, why? What instigated this? And if you realize that person tried to be friends with someone and they rejected that friendship, and that's why they're so angry at them, you're kind of like, I don't really think that, like, I should follow. I shouldn't be angry at them just because you're angry at them. You've made it personal. And I would just say that the people who are against Bazley, it's personal. Yeah. It's not really based on anything else. And I mentioned Andrew's comment, but like, I gotta
say, that rallied a lot of people up. That really rallied up a lot of people that not realizing where the frustration and hate came from Andrew Schleck, because, like, I mean, Mark even said that he would get that recording and play it for everybody. And listen, you should play at the end, right, and record that for everybody, because to me, it's so much exactly of why we started this podcast and why we're standing up for these guys, is because Bazley and Ousmane Dieng, like, these guys, which we've heard a lot of negative shit about, like, I heard somebody say that the New York Knicks won the trade. In fact, the New York Knicks were considered to win this trade up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when people started whispering, like, Ousmane's way better than anybody realized. Like, that was the first of it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, to me, the moment that we start recognizing that Ousmane Dieng, he was better. We knew that ahead of time. Like, I told everybody that what we traded for the Knicks, right, for that pick, was a bunch of draft picks that we weren't considered that are going to turn into first rounders. I mean, literally, we took 3 trash draft picks that maybe one of them turns into a first rounder. The rest of them convey into second rounders. And he traded that for Ousmane Dieng because the Knicks didn't want him. And I look at that, I'm like, damn, dude, like, what the fuck, And then Ousmane's going to take time to develop, and we know that. But why throw him under the bus the second we picked him up? A lot of people threw him under the bus. They said this is a bad pick, and then they say those are the same people that are talking shit on Darius Bazley. You know, it's like, why can't you guys just let these guys play? And your job as a fan or super fan or even a podcaster or a writer is to support these guys and tell the team and tell the organization and everybody the good stories that are happening and highlighting Chet that's going out and giving out coats.
Especially in development time.
Yeah. Right? Like, this is where you highlight the players and show the guys your support. Because when they start doing well, do you think they're going to treat you like Russ treated like Barry Trammell if you've been a dick to them? I guarantee you, if Schleck asked Bazley a question that was a question that could be considered a slight, Bazley would just go, next question. Because Bazley already dislikes him because he already has heard what he said about him. You know, these guys, these players, they hear. You know, that we've been told by multiple people that the players in the organization have heard our podcast. And that's because we're sitting here telling everybody the good things about these guys. We're sitting here telling you all the things we love about Bazley. We're sitting here telling you all the things we love about Ousmane Dieng and Josh Giddey. And everybody else is saying, we're being fair. Fair to who? Fair to these players? Fair to the organization? Like, who are you being fair to? The negative assholes out there in the world? Sure. You're being fair to those guys. I guess everybody in the negative ass world, ass hand, ass hat, ass whatever, it doesn't matter. They all need a little a piece of something, but it's so embarrassing and so much bullshit that I get pissed off at because, like, this is just our team. Like, why can't we support our team instead of trying to be fucking fair? And it doesn't matter. That's not reporting. That's just showing people that you have a semi-decent brain that you can say, I really like this team, but here's all the negative things about them. Why not say, I really like this team, and here's all the positive things about them? But it's like, no, we don't do that shit. No. We're fair. We say negative things and positive things. We also compare the players to meat, pieces of meat and different things like that. Like, this is the same type of mentality that this organization, this podcasting has been around, and it's to me it's no longer, it's not needed. And that's why, to me, I look at this and I say Bazley is a guy we want on this team. He is a guy that can be huge and impactful for many, many, many years down the road. And everybody that's ready to throw Bazley out and say, I'll take a second rounder for him, they just don't understand hoops. They just don't. They don't know how to look at a player and say, this is what we're seeing. This is good. Because if you're expecting him to go out there and push down like insane amounts of points every single game, you just don't understand what he is capable of, you know, and that's okay, because it's the defense that is the highlight of Bazley's entire existence out there. And what this team is trying to tell him, Bazley, if you can't hit shots, you still can be productive on the defensive end, and that's okay.
Yeah, he's very talented on the defensive end, and over time, his offense will continue to develop.
Yes.
We know that. We've seen it happen. But you got to earn those minutes on the defensive end. We've talked about it with really every player.
It's not given.
Right. And it's a part of the process. But when he's engaged, when he understands what he's capable of, then, you know, we're going to see good things happen. So my assessment is really simple. We just have to look at him and say, like, he's an Oklahoman, right? And when do Oklahomans kick other Oklahomans when they're down? Yeah, he's had some tough times. I mean, getting 2 games in a row where you don't play, those are difficult circumstances. So, I mean, why turn into the bullies and surround somebody and kick them while they're down? Like, we got to stand up and say, like, no, that's not all right. We've seen it happen before, and we just don't want to see it happen again. And if the people are going to do it again, we're just going to say, like, what's the motive? Because there's got to be one. And if it's personal, then we're going to call it personal. And it's not much more complicated than that.
And KJ, he wrote me an email after our last podcast. Appreciate the email, KJ. And his thing was, I wish you guys didn't spend so much time talking shit on Down to Dunk. I wish you didn't spend so much time highlighting some of their shit. What I have to say about that, and what I essentially told him was, like, you're right. We spend a little bit too much time hyper-focusing on stuff like that. But the reason we do is because we want the listener, the people, to be educated about what has been said about these players. Like, right. Obviously, Schleck has had an issue with Bazley and highlighting that and telling people about that so they can go back and they can listen to it and they can hear it and they can understand it is what I call an education. That's not something that to me is a negative aspect. Yeah, we do talk negative because that's what they do. They call themselves fair, but I don't want to sit here and talk trash on Down to Dunk or any of those other podcasts out there, but
any more than we have to, because let's face it, like if there was a bully on the playground that was bullying somebody, you would need to get them to back down.
Yeah,
that's it.
And KJ, I'm looking forward to getting you on the podcast and picking your brain, because it seems like you grew up in the old school era of basketball, and I fucking love talking hoops with old school era people. So definitely looking forward to that.
This is just very simply a pattern. Okay? If this was a single one-off issue, then we would let it fly. It wouldn't matter. But when you see a pattern and you can be like, this is a pattern that has gone really ugly for this fan base before.
Yeah.
An example, although it's from football, but when the OU Sooners and Caleb Williams was on the bench and Spencer Rattler was out there starting and everybody started chanting for Caleb Williams. But think about what that did to Spencer Rattler. Like, that type of shit really fucks with people.
Well, everybody knew it was going to happen. So why, why?
Right.
Like, just
exactly.
to show that you can prove that you can be an asshole to people?
Right. And it probably ended up meaning they lost both quarterbacks. And it could have been a different situation. And
if they were cheering for Rattler and they were giving him the support, he would have been there this year in a completely different scenario.
Right. And I think for us, even though we don't want to get stuck talking about football, I think the idea is that as a fan base, you can see certain things. You can be like, hey, we don't want to act that way. We don't want to be like the Philadelphia teams that boo their teams out there, or like the Knicks who boo every single draft pick they get. Like, how do you think that affects the psyche of a 19 or a 20-year-old to get booed by a city and you say, like, literally, I have to overcome everybody hating me? I mean, it's incredible what these fan bases can do, and they don't see themselves as a part of the problem. They're like, we haven't had a championship since 72 or whatever. It's like, well, how about you fix yourself?
Yeah.
Right? And then you can start seeing better. And
that's it.
Look, sometimes we don't know how we're perceived. Okay? I understand that. But somebody has to tell you. And one of my favorite stories about Oklahoma, back when it was the Hornets, right? I'm sure some people out there remember the name Chris Anderson. Chris Anderson in the early days was right, but before he got covered in tattoos and went full mohawk, he was with the with the Hornets.
Yep.
Okay. And he ended up getting kicked out of the NBA for a couple of years for doing, some sort of substance that must have been pretty fucking great, because they don't kick you out for 2 years for weed.
Yeah.
Right?
No, or cocaine. I mean, those are okay drugs in the NBA.
He was doing the sampler, we'll call it, but smoking Jeffries, and but they had
a wall, baby.
They had a billboard up that was up before he left, and it stayed up for a long time. It said, "Feel the buzz with the Birdman," the Hornets. Yeah. And after he got kicked out for getting high, they left that up for like 3 months.
Yeah,
it was forever. Yeah. And I understand sometimes you don't know how you're perceived. I don't think any executives lived out in that part of town where they were like seeing that billboard. So they missed it. But you can still look it up, man. Those pictures exist thanks to the Lost Ogle. And my point is just this. Like, as a fan base, we have to recognize when we're looking stupid and when we're giving up on 20-year-olds, and we can look at it like, yeah, we gave up on Poku too early. That was our bad. But we won't do it again with Poku. But Bazley are done with him. Like
that's what's so crazy.
It's crazy.
It's like, I don't know, man. You meet those people that literally their whole purpose in life is to make everybody else's life miserable. It's like everything comes out of their mouth is whine and complain, and it's just like every single time you hang out with them, it's a chore to hang out with them. I guess that's what I've always looked at this podcast and really tried to think about. Like, I don't want this to turn into that. I don't want this to turn into a place that people come and complain about the players and complain about the organization and these picks and trading players and all this other stuff. I don't want that here. I want you guys to be able to come and hear what is great about Darius Bazley, Ousmane Dieng, J-Dub, Shea, Josh, Dort. Everybody on this team. This is a safe place for that positive talk. And that's as simple as that. Like, we can sugarcoat this in any other way. We can make this sound any better in any other way. But when push comes to shove, it's about this team. And that's where our passion lies, is with this team. There is nothing else. There's nothing more that brings us more happiness and joy and hoops and anything that we sit down and watch the Thunder and we're watching these players. And a lot of times Mark and I, we mute the TV, right? On the second time through we watched it, and we just watch individual players. And that's all we watch. We watch how they move. We watch how they watch the ball. We watch how they do these different things. And to me, it's important because when you're just looking at the stats, right, you can say, oh, Bazley's having a horrible night, or Poku didn't have a great night. But when you're watching the game and you're seeing Poku and Bazley and all these other guys, they're doing so many different things. They're getting out there, they're getting tips, they're getting stops on defense and stopping the ball and stopping the drive and creating so much havoc out there. You're like, holy shit, okay. But if you're sitting there watching the stats, you're not getting a whole picture. And that, if you're watching the stats and nothing else, you're not getting the whole picture. You're not seeing the impacts they're having in games. Like, you're looking at Kenny Hustle's minutes as wasted minutes because he only put 8 points up here and there. But guess what? His minutes are never wasted because you don't see the charges on the stats that he gets. You don't see the offensive boards always on the stats because his offensive boards are sometimes tip-aways, right back out to the top of the key to Shea or to Josh or whoever. Like, these guys do so much on every given night that you can't help but just admire and watch the flow of the game. And that's what we want to portray on this podcast with you. Because if you sit there and watch the game and like, oh, fucking Dort shot the ball again. Like, that's what you're going to portray. You know what? Mark and I are like, Dort missed the shot. We're like, next time, let's go. Get back up the court. Let's go. Get a stop. Like, that's the way we look. That's the way we see the game. It's not negative. It's, okay, learning lesson. Now, there's going to be a time for negative shit going down, but that's when this team is competing for a championship. That's when there's game 6 is on the line and we're up, or it's tied 3-3 and we're up, by 10 points and we lose the lead. Then we can be negative, right? We can say, this is what happened. This is why we lost the lead. But this is not now. This is about the team and understanding exactly where this team is going and making sure our listeners understand with us, because Sam Presti has laid it out. Every year he lays it out. If you go back and listen to all the conversations in the interviews that he does, he lays out the foundation blocks for you right there. And what do Mark and I do every year? We geek out. We listen to Sam Presti's interviews that he does probably 3 or 4, maybe even more times in a very short amount of time, understanding, picking up the things that he says, because those are the things that we're watching during the year, because he gives it right to you in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, man. If you feel how we feel, then we'll fuck with you. That's it, man. Like, it doesn't mean we don't feel emotions during the game that, like negative emotions when we miss a shot, feel down from a loss.
Sure.
But
free throws, sure.
And it's important, like when you feel that, it's like, just breathe. Observe the emotion, recognize that it's a part of the game, and ask yourself, like, does that emotion actually reflect the final score, or are we just going through one of the other team's runs? Because that shit happens, and we've learned that with really, I can only think of one exception. Like, a team really just went on a run and we didn't catch up. Like, we catch up from runs. We do it. Does it mean we're going to win the game? Do we expend too much energy coming back from 15 down? Fine. I get that. But we're young. We're showing all the traits of youth, right? But the thing that's special, we know, is the small signs of greatness that turn into big signs of greatness, right? Like, there's a misconception that, there's going to suddenly be like this moment where you're like, oh, this person suddenly became great. We're seeing it happen in front of us. Playing at a really high level consistently is the sign of greatness. So we're watching it happen, and we're trying to figure out how to, as a team, match the greatness that Shea's putting out. Or, individuals are stepping up and having moments, but they're not figuring out how to string those moments into a consistent level, but that's part of growth. So we're experiencing it, we're going through the ride, but we're choosing which emotions we want to dwell on. That's it. It's that simple.
And the best way of putting it, we can't really put that on there.
Okay, good.
I can't say that. But let's just put it like out here like this, is that I feel like at this point in our lives where we're playing with everything that we've got on the table. You know, like, I do not like talking. I love talking. I do not like listening to myself talk. I do not listen to myself talk after we put these podcasts up. I can't handle it. But to me, it's not about that. You know, it's about understanding when there's nobody else out there. There's no other voice out there. There has to be at least one voice of reason. And I'm not saying that Mark and I are that voice of reason, because we're kind of fucked in our own little ways. But what we are is we understand the game in such a way that was taught to us, that when you're watching and you're observing to see what's happening, you recognize that there's so much other stuff going on. And maybe that's from the education that we had from when we first started coaching early in our days. We coached 10 and under and 12 and under, and we worked our way up through the system and understood what player development meant. And those are the things that I look back and I'm so grateful that we had those times with those really young kids. And there's no yelling involved. You're not yelling at a kid for double dribbling when he's 8 years old playing against a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds. You're like, all right, good job, let's get back on D. You know, like, and if you have that mentality and you think about all these kids that are playing in the NBA and this Oklahoma City Thunder team is a bunch of 10 and 12 and under kids right now playing, right? Why are you yelling? Why are you screaming at them? Why are you chanting against them? Why are you saying things? Why are you putting things on Twitter? I mean, these guys are just young, you know, like, they're not very old. All of them have hearts, and we're putting out there, some of the people are putting stuff out there about these players, it's just bullshit. You know, like, these guys, they don't like being attacked. I don't like being attacked. I'm sure you don't like being attacked. So why are we going to put our stuff out there about Bazley that being washed up and we should trade him for a second rounder, and Ousmane Dieng wasn't worth, 3 first round draft picks that aren't going to convey into first round draft picks? Like what are people I don't understand. I'm just trying to contemplate everything that's happening right now. And it just seems
we have to ask, like, with the Knicks, their attitude toward players, like a player like Kevin Knox, was he really just not talented? Or what, and for us as Thunder fans, we can look at it and be like, well, they don't have player development focus. They don't understand how to have an organization set up that will help him become the best player he could be, right? And it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, the Thunder wouldn't have that problem. The harder thing to say is, how much of it did the fans have to do with it? Not just with Kevin Knox, but going all the way back to what we call the Charlie Ward situation, where he's the last player before, I think, Barrett to get a rookie extension. Like, this pressure that the media and the fans can create can become very difficult. Now, the Thunder in the past was able to create a cocoon for development, but then they get ridiculed in the media for overprotecting the players. So then they try to make them available. And then in making them available, we see people trying to divide them. So that's all. If we see that happening in the past, all I would do is bitch about it to my friends. I'd be like, I can't believe this is happening. Now, I just happen to have a couple hundred friends who will listen. Nothing's changed about me.
All right.
And other people, apparently, because we've had a number of people contact us and say they feel the same way about Barry Trammell.
I want everybody to do this real quickly. This is your homework for the day. I want everybody to get your fucking middle fingers out. And everybody at the same time, we're going to say, fuck you, Barry Trammell. 1, 2, 3. Fuck you, Barry Trammell.
Dingleberry Trammell. All right. And don't be fooled by the people who are following in his footsteps and trying to create issues. I'm going to go ahead and play this little clip between Andrew and Bazley. First of all, I'll tell you, I edited out the first part of Bazley's answer, so it will sound more direct than it was, but you really need to hear the conflict. So Andrew asks the question, then Bazley answers it with almost 2 minutes of answers, which I think is, a very intelligent answer. But then after that, he pauses and says, I don't like that type of question. So I want you guys to hear that after Andrew's question, and you can understand basically the conflict, and then you can understand, I don't know, I watched this great show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and it's hilarious. It's really inappropriate. Never watch it with your parents. I tried. It was awkward. Anyway, but here's the thing, right? The guy's like, don't go for that girl, man. Don't go for that girl, right? And it basically comes out like, it's because he went for the girl and she turned him down. Like, do you trust that guy? Or do you say like, no, man, you're bitter. You know what I mean? I'm not going to listen to your advice about that person. You're not allowed to assess whether or not I'm a good match just because you tried and failed, right? And then you got to be like, I'm blocking you out. And then if that person keeps lying to you and be like, oh, no, that wasn't it. Then you start saying like, I have to listen to you less and less and less in my life. And if that happens, then you'd be like, basically, trust erodes and breaks down because of a lie, right? And the lie is, absolutely, I don't have a problem with that person. It's not personal. And if it is, well, I'll let you decide. Here, hit play, baby. Thanks for joining us. We love you. Thunder up against the Mavs. Let's go.
Hey, Baze. I wonder what your thoughts are as the team is kind of being deconstructed. Tons of trades happen over the course of several weeks. How are you finding out these things? Is this something that like you're talking about as a team? Is there like a text thread going on? Like tell us your side of the story.
Thanks, Darius.
I don't like those questions because I feel like you're trying to stir up something. You know, it's just like I don't think it really matters how people find out certain things, or like it's just the team is moving in a direction. Guys get moved around, guys get traded, whatever. But I don't like that. I feel like you're trying to stir something up.